Welcome to Mineral Talks Live, the monthly live mineral webinar that brings you in-depth and in-person interviews with mineral people from around the world. Mineral Talks Live is brought to you by a joint effort among the Mineralogical and Geological Museum at Harvard University, the SMMP, and Blue Cap Productions. Tune in on the first Wednesday of every month and stay connected to your mineral world. Now, broadcasting live from beautiful Honolulu, Hawaii, the land of aloha, ukuleles, and shakas, this is Mineral Talks Live. Good morning, everyone, and welcome back to Mineral Talks Live. As you can see, we're back in our studios in Honolulu, Cambridge, and Paris, but I still have to say that last month's show was one of the most fun shows I've ever had. In case you missed it, the reason I love that show so much was because that was the first show we've ever done where the three of us were together in the same room throughout the show. What a blast that was. And our guest, longtime friend Bob Jackson, was fantastic as always. Now, we haven't posted that show yet because I've been too tied up with Tucson and getting back into the swing of things once I finally got back home. But keep your eyes peeled for that show to go on later this week, and you can see the three of us broadcasting from the new Blue Cap Productions studio at the Tucson Fine Mineral Gallery, right in the heart of Tucson. But let's get back to today's show. Today is Wednesday, March 2nd of 2022, and we have a fantastic Mineral Talks Live for you today. For those of you tuning in for the first time, Mineral Talks Live is the monthly mineral talk show where we sit down with people from all facets of the mineral world to learn about what they do, who they are, and what drives them. I'm Brian Swoboda, the president of Blue Cap Productions, and together with my mezcal guzzling partners, Dr. Raquel Alonso Perez from the Mineralogical and Geological Museum at Harvard University, and Dr. Eloise Gaillou from the Society of Mineral Museum Professionals, also known as the SMMP, we want to welcome all of you to the best mineral talk show on the internet. Throughout the life of this program, we've been incredibly honored to sit down and chat with some of the best curatrix, curators, collectors, dealers, miners, researchers, artists, and media people in the mineral world. I think it's obvious that we're having a great time, and we appreciate all of you who have been along for the ride. If you'd like to help us in keeping great episodes like this coming, go ahead and click the like button below and be sure to tell your friends about us. Now, one thing about this show that's unique is that this isn't just a conversation between me and our guests. All of you get to be a part of the show by participating through the chat features or the Q&A features, both of which are located at the bottom of your Zoom window. The chat feature allows you to type messages to everyone watching the live show, and as we're all about community, when you first sign on, go ahead and fire off a hello to everyone, telling us where you're tuning in from. Also, if you have general thoughts or comments during the show, this is where you can post them and interact with each other while we're talking. Now, usually our guests and I aren't able to read those comments, but never fear, Raquel and Eloise will be very active in the chat area and may even interject a question or two to us during the interview. So now, what if you have a really burning question you want to ask, but it's a bit off topic from what we're talking about at the moment? Well, in that case, go ahead and type it in the Q&A section, and we'll do our best to get to that at the end of the show. Finally, at about 40 minutes into the program, you'll see a window pop up on your screen asking a bunch of questions for our Quickfire 5 segment. This is where you get to see how well you know our guests. And yes, we play along too, as we're not even sure of all the answers to the questions we ask. Now, today's guest is a multi-award-winning jewelry designer fresh off of her debut at the Tucson Fine Mineral Gallery. To say that her jewelry brings joy and happiness to the wearer is an understatement, as you can clearly see in these photographs. That's our very own Eloise, and there is our lovely Raquel at the Harvard University party in Tucson, wearing some pieces created by today's guest. Ladies and gentlemen, coming to us live from the Walensky Exquisite Mineral Gallery in New York, please welcome to our show, jewelry designer Naomi Sarna. Naomi, how are you today?
I'm wonderful. I'm wonderful. So happy to be here and see you all again. It was so much fun in Tucson. It was terrific.
Well, it was great having you there, meeting you there and getting to spend some time with you. And I'm really looking forward to this interview because I think you have so much to talk about.
Well, what I'd like to do is start with how I get my pieces to be the way that they are. And today,
well, now, Naomi, I want to get to that, but first I want to get some background information from you, because that's one of the things that I love to do on the show. I love to get our audience to get to know our guests a little bit more. So if you don't mind, let me ask you a couple background questions, and then we're going to get right into your work. Is that okay?
Of course.
Great. Now, Naomi, according to your bio, you grew up in Montana, where you were first introduced to minerals, gems, and fossils, and you talk about your early memories of being in your grandfather's store where miners came to buy goods. First of all, what kind of store did your grandfather have? And then tell us about those early days.
Butte, Montana was a very wild place.
Mm.
It was a very rugged mining town, as mining towns can be. And the types of tools that most of the miners used were hand tools, chisels, hammers, that sort of thing, hats, hard hats. And my grandfather had a store at 207 South Arizona Street, which doesn't exist anymore. The street was mud. The sidewalks were made out of wooden planks. You had to be careful when you walked around there. So people would come in and they would sit on the wooden nail kegs in a sort of a circle, and they would talk politics and they would talk about what they had found. And these were very rugged guys who had hands that were like horns. Everything about them was hardened and rugged from their work up in the mountains, scratching around, coming up with sapphires sometimes with very interesting small mineral specimens, that sort of thing. But it was always very lively. And then when they would leave, my grandfather would sweep the wooden floor with that green sawdust that I haven't seen in a million years. But I remember vividly the color and the aroma of it. So sure. I grew up with the aromas of machine oil and the green sawdust and miners who had just come from the mountains, their particular smells and stuff like that. I had a very not only visually rich upbringing there, but also certainly aromas. My grandmother was a fabulous cook, and one of the things that everybody ate in Butte, Montana were pasties, which were meat pies that the Cornish and Welsh and Irish miners would take like a calzone, only with meat in it, and sometimes they would put in potatoes or turnips or something like that. And there were a few places in Butte where you could go buy them for a quarter. And I would be sent out 5, 6 years old to go down the block to the Woolworths, where they had a little tiny stand, and you could get the pasties there and then bring them home, and everybody would enjoy themselves. Butte was a very, when I say rugged, it was not so easy to walk around. There were a lot of hills. So my grandfather and I would walk. He'd hold my little hand, and we would walk up to the mines, to the mine heads. Well, these things were like out of Star Wars, these gigantic scaffolding mine heads, and watch the miners come up from maybe a mile below.
Sure.
This was a huge mining industry, and it was said at that time that Butte was the richest hill on earth.
Right.
Gold, silver, especially copper, and many of the mines were owned by the Anaconda Copper Company, and they extracted huge amounts and created tremendous slag heaps. I didn't know until I was much older that I was really raised in an incredibly impoverished and environmentally, dare I use the word, raped area.
Sure, yeah.
For 50 miles around Butte, there was this ochre earth. I thought that that's the way it was. But what had happened is to fire to fuel the fires that created the heat for the smelters, both in Anaconda and in Butte, the forests were all wiped out. They just cut everything in sight. So there was tumbleweed there and nothing much grew. My grandparents had a little tiny plot outside their door. It was all black cinders. And when I said to my grandmother, how come you don't plant something there? She laughed because it was not possible to grow anything there. It was a
that became one of the most polluted places on the planet, isn't that correct?
The Berkeley pit, yes. What happened is that the Berkeley pit was one of the largest open pit mines in the world. And then in the early 50s, Anaconda shut everything down, stopped the pumps, and the pit filled up with, you might call it water, but it was liquid, with totally poisoned with heavy metals, arsenic, cadmium, stuff like that. Now, I thought it was interesting that the streets in Butte were named gold, silver, lead, copper, but there was nothing ever named cadmium. There was nothing named arsenic. And this is really, this is—
who would want to live on Arsenic Lane?
No kidding. But this is what poisoned the Berkeley pit, and it's the recipient of the largest Superfund grant. They don't know what to do. They don't know how to separate the heavy toxic metals from the water, and it just sort of sits there. So this has been going on since the 50s. It's it's incredibly toxic.
So now your grandfather, was it a kind of a general mercantile shop that he had? What kind of shop was it?
Mostly tools, mostly hand tools.
Okay. All right, so it was like a hardware store, hardware shop.
Pretty much so. Pretty much so.
So then what took you from Butte, Montana, and the way that you describe it is absolutely brilliant because you give us a real vivid picture of what it was like growing up there, and it feels like it's a Western movie.
It was the end of the Wild West.
Yeah, exactly. Truly. Exactly. So from there, you ended up in Philadelphia, but I know that there were a few stops along the way. Tell us real quickly about that arc from Butte to Philadelphia.
Well, I spent most of my childhood in Great Falls, Montana, where the world's tallest smelter smokestack was, also Anaconda. And when I was 18, I married a rabbi, and in a very circuitous way, we ended up in Atlantic City, of all places. And from Atlantic City, I would commute into Philly to the Pennsylvania Academy of Fine Arts because I didn't have any kids at that time. I was maybe 19 years old. I needed something to do. And I was driven to do something with my hands because from my earliest memories, the process of making something with my hands was elemental to me. I hardly ever sit still. I move my hands a lot when I talk, and I have become accomplished at many, many things, as did many women in Montana or in the West at that time, knitting, sewing, crocheting. When I was 5, 6, 8 years old, you learned how to do. And so I had this wonderful opportunity to go to the Pennsylvania Academy of Fine Arts, which was the oldest art academy in the United States. And I had for 3 years a classical art training. It was like being in Paris. It was fantastic.
Sure.
So then we moved to New York, and at that point we had 2 kids and we separated, and I went on to create Montana Palace, which was an off-premise catering company. And I specialized in parties for over 1,000 people. Why did I call it Mark?
Wait, yeah, I'm sorry, hang on for a sec. There's a disconnect here. You went from Butte to
Atlantic City.
To Atlantic City. You were studying at the Pennsylvania Fine Art or Academy of Fine Art.
I've been around.
That's you became a caterer.
All right. I went from Butte to Great Falls, from Great Falls to I was in New Mexico for a semester or so while my husband was fulfilling his time in the Air Force. He was a chaplain in the Air Force. And then we moved to Atlantic City. And that's how I got in. I used to commute every day into Philly to go to art school. And then he got a congregation in New York City, which is how I got to New York, and had my second child here in New York. And then when we separated, I needed to earn a living, and I didn't want to be a starving artist.
Okay, that was the missing link, because I was trying to figure out how you went from studying sculpture and fabric draping to catering, and it was a move of necessity. You needed to survive and create an income for yourself.
Yeah, I knew a lot of starving artists, and I didn't like that look. But I knew I was a good cook. And so I started this food business, and eventually had really quite fabulous clients, including John Lennon and Yoko Ono and the Paul Taylor Dance Company and folks like that. It was a very New York experience, and I was well reviewed in the New York Times and the New Yorker, and it was like I say, it was a very New York sort of experience. Right. And then it was very, very hard work. So simultaneously, I started going to psychoanalysis. I went into psychotherapy because I wanted to be a good parent. And
interesting.
These were sort of modern times. I didn't really know how to be the kind of parent I wanted to be.
Well, so nobody gives you a manual. You have to figure it out on your own.
Yeah, it was puzzling to me, that's for sure. But during the course of my own therapy, I thought, this is something I can do. And I always wanted to be of service to people. From the time I was 8 years old, I was always doing some kind of volunteer work that I thought would be helpful. So here I thought, okay, I can be a therapist and help people. And so I was sort of riding many horses at the same time. I was tapering off with the catering business, which I sold, and going to psychoanalytic school. And then I had to go get a bachelor's degree because the school wouldn't let me move into the next division until I had a bachelor's degree. And then they wouldn't graduate me until I had a master's. So I was going to school a lot for a while there. And then I had my practice for for maybe 30, 35 years, something like that. But all the time I was still doing things with my hands. And maybe once a year I would send myself to camp. And during one of these camp adventures, I went out to Alan Revere's school in San Francisco and spent a week with Vern Munsteiner.
Oh, famous man.
That was a very fabulous experience because, as you can see, I don't carve the way that he does. Right. But what he taught us was open your mind. Here's a crystal. It's got a lot of so-called inclusions in it. Aren't they beautiful? And I thought, wow, these are fabulous. And I had the freedom. He gave me the freedom to carve any way that I wanted. So that was really wonderful. It was a revelation to me because when I had, in between some of these little camps, I spent a couple of weekends with Stefan Kotlowski up in Beacon with his wonderful family, learning how to facet. And so I learned about light return from that experience. But faceting for me was a lot of straight lines and flat planes. And I wanted to do something more than that. But I had been inhibited because somebody said, oh, don't carve too much. Don't grind away the precious material. And then I had a revelation.
They were thinking more about yield and not creating a vision like you like to do.
Exactly. Then I realized, something, I'm not going to lose my home because of my faceting too much or my carving too much precious material. I'm going to be okay. So I became very design driven, and that stays with me today. And I think that's one of the very important things about my work is that I don't want to be profligate about getting rid of precious material, but it isn't the important thing to me, saving it. What's important to me is to make something that follows the beautiful line, that really is a thing of art and beauty.
I understand. Let's get into that in a little bit, but I know that you have when we were talking yesterday, you gave me kind of a little quote where you compared faceting to the carving that you do, and it was about refraction and what you do. Go ahead and explain that to the audience, if you would.
Everyone knows what a faceted stone looks like, and that it has flat planes. You think about your typical round diamond. If you look at it, you see there are all these little facets that go around it. And the ideal cuts for many stones is that the light goes down, it goes across, and then it comes up. And that's when you see the sparkle. That's interesting. And learning that was very useful to me, as I'll explain further when I'm showing my pieces. Now, someone like Victor Tuzlakov, who's the world's most fabulous faceter.
Incredible. He showed some fantastic pieces at Tucson this year.
Unbelievable. And what is he interested in? He's interested in light dispersion, which is a different thing. How do you split the light so that you get a myriad of colors, the full range of color, instead of just perhaps a white light coming up? And that was also very, very informative to me. What I do is I take the light and the color and I distort it. So the back of my pieces and the front of the pieces work together to create something that doesn't really exist. You see it, but it isn't there. It's not in the carving. It's in the interaction between the front and the back, the sides, or whatever, with the light jumping around.
Yeah. Now, it's very apropos that, and perhaps that really guided you being a psychoanalyst in what you're doing now, because that being a psychoanalyst really helped you understand people. And to me, the core of people is really the stories that we all have and that we share with each other. Now, each one of your pieces has a very strong story behind it. And I think that's one of the things that just fascinates me about your work. So I want to get into that individually as we start looking at some of the pieces. But before we do that, I'd like you to talk a little bit about your process. When you first see a stone, how does that resonate with you? How does that speak to you? Do you immediately see what it wants to become? Or is it something where you recognize the potential and then you sit on it until the idea comes to you, or until the stone speaks to you, where you can finally go ahead and start working on it?
Most of the time, the rough material jumps into my hands.
Okay.
And I'm going to show you one piece that won an AGTA award. This is an almandine garnet. Let me see if I hold this up. You can see it on the white background a little better. Can you see that?
I'm going to pull up a photograph of that same piece. I want you to continue holding that up, because when we're done looking at this, I want to go back to seeing the live photograph, the live image of it. But go ahead and talk about this piece.
Okay, this piece, it's quite large, as you can see, but it had a crack. And I looked at that crack and I thought, this is the gates of the mountains. The name came to me immediately. And when Lewis and Clark, on their voyage of discovery, were in Montana, going up the Missouri River, outside of Helena, Montana, there's an area where the mountains come right down into the river. And as you're going up, it appears that the mountains are parting and then closing. It's a very interesting optical illusion. So they called it the gates of the mountain, And when I saw this almandine garnet, I knew exactly what I was going to do with it and how I was going to create the illusion of opening and closing. So there are actually 4 layers on this garnet. There's the front, there's the back, there's the way that I opened up the crack, and the underside of the top part where the crack is. So it it's just, it was magical to me. I mean, I didn't even have to think about it. And
that was so, Naomi, the crack really kind of guided you
truly
to what that wanted to be, more so than the color.
Oh, well, the color was nice, but the crack was very compelling.
The crack defined it, yeah.
And then after I got the piece pretty well carved, that's when I start to play around with the color and light distortion. And knowing the what the ideal what's the word I'm looking, the ideal angles of this piece would be if I cut it in a regular faceted way becomes very important to me, and I tweak the angles of the lines that I have carved front and back so that then I get maximum amount of light and color return. And the front and the back then begin to interact with each other. I'm showing you the front. This is the back. They're not going in the same direction. And yet there are places where they sort of wiggle around each other.
So you're not completing the front first and then working on the back. You're almost working on them simultaneously to see how they interact with each other.
Always turning, always moving, that sort of thing.
Interesting. So it's truly a 360-degree process where you're carving, and every move that you make on one side affects what's going to happen on the other side. Absolutely.
And when I have, if someone shows me a piece of rough that, let's say, is a sawn block, it does not move me at all. I have a very hard time with 100% clean rectangular material.
Well, there's nothing there to speak to you. It's already been modified by man to be very, very generic. And so yes. I can't imagine that it would speak to you unless there was an incredible inclusion, in which case I think you would find something in it.
That's exactly what happens. Now, one of the things that I like about quartz is the conchoidal fracturing that quartz has. And when I see quartz, here, I'll just grab this one piece. Boy, this is an exciting piece to me. Look at all those, fracture lines from the cobbing. It's clean material, but the shape of it is all over the place. And I feel very excited to have this piece of Rose de France amethyst because it's speaking to me. It's saying, go here, go there.
I love it. Now, Naomi, earlier in the show, I brought up this image, and that is Eloise. She is a passionate opal person, and you happen to be wearing the same piece right now. Talk to us about that piece.
Well, this piece of Mexican fire opal, I kept it for several years because I wanted to see, I wanted it to be dry. I wanted to see if it was going to crack. Sometimes this material is very fragile, and but while it was resting, I'll put it that way, I came to know it. And it's not one of my deep carvings, but it is carved front and back. And you can see in the picture, the back, I've got a reflector on it, and the piece as an art object needs to be finished. So it has this beautiful engraving on the back. It's really a work of art that you can wear. But when I started to carve this, I have to say, I kind of went into certainly an alpha state. I was mindless.
So it was almost, you were almost in a trance.
I was in a trance. That's exactly the right word. I was in a trance carving this. And it's not deeply carved. It was carved the way it wanted to be. It was easy to stop. I had a few problems on the back, tweaking the angle so that I would get the light to come back and interact on the front. But for the most part, this was really easy to do. It just wanted to be that way. And then when I set it, in the photo, you can see better. This has a few hundred multicolored stones. I don't know if you can get up tight on that. Yeah, on my website, you can see all of the stones. These stones were the colors that came to me. Laying out the colorway on this piece was so easy because they all appeared to me in this orange fire. It was kind of complementing the heat of this wonderful piece that I've called Fire Empress. Now, I happen to be a very devoted follower of APOD, the astronomy picture of the day. And when they post the sun with the solar flares coming out, I think it's incredibly wonderful. And at one point, early on, I was one of the 2 corporate sponsors of APOD, which is a NASA-supported site. And I look at the heavens frequently, and I get a lot of inspiration for them, for my pieces. And that's how this piece came to be called Fire Empress, because at that time there were these huge solar flares going on.
Well, now, Naomi, your attention to detail is fantastic, because on the Fire Empress, if you were to look at the clasp, it's an incredibly beautiful clasp, and it echoes the kind of the pave stones that you have circling the opal. And what are those? Are those different colored sapphires?
Multicolored sapphires and diamonds. I'm addicted to colored diamonds. And my clasp took me years to create, going through various iterations. And then, of course, as an important jewel, the clasp had to be embellished. So I took the same colors from those surrounding the fire opal and on the bail here, and put them on the clasp. Well, I used color quite a bit in subtle and then in more extravagant ways. For example, the bracelet that I'm wearing is completely carved quartz crystal. That's it. Sophisticated lady. And
Sophisticated lady.
That name also came to me very suddenly. It's 18 karat white gold. It does not have a rhodium plating on it. So it's kind of, because it's the palladium 18 karat white gold, it has a kind of lavender tone to me. And I put in very, very pale pink diamonds, which warm the piece up. If I had put in white diamonds, it would have been a chilly piece. But this way,
it's very subtle. I wouldn't tell. I couldn't tell by the picture that there were pink diamonds. But now that you explain
pale
very
pink,
pale, yeah, exactly.
But definitely a warm color that really makes a difference.
Mm-hmm.
So, yes, hello, my name is Naomi Sarna, and I am addicted to colored stones. It's a problem sometimes.
Well, I'm going to go on to another one that I saw in Tucson that was absolutely fantastic. But before I do, Eloise has her microphone off. So on her behalf, I want to thank you for donating that opal necklace to her private collection.
I
can turn my microphone on. Thank you very much, Naomi. This is lovely.
I will send it overnight.
Oh, that's perfect. That's perfect.
I know.
I will be there to receive it. No worries.
Anytime. I will be happy to send it overnight.
Great.
And I'll tell you, some of the photographs that I took when Eloise put that on in Tucson, you could just see her eyes were like saucers. It was the most adorable thing. She was so blown away by it. So, Naomi, thank you for letting her wear that.
It was a pleasure because I like my work to be enjoyed. And when you put on a serious jewel, it feels good.
Yeah.
It's really thrilling to put on something like this or to wear the crystal bracelet. Belle Perron would have loved this. It was important jewelry to me should be worn and enjoyed.
Well, it's designed to be worn, so absolutely.
Yeah, truly.
Naomi, I'm going to take a side jump away from jewelry for a second so that you have time to talk about this piece because I think it's a stellar piece and it's got an incredible story.
Okay. Here I am carving
and I'm
along.
actually going to put it in motion here.
Oh, wonderful. Fantastic. I'm going to pick it up.
I've got all the fun tricks here at the studio.
I'm so happy that you have that video. And not only do I want to have the video here, I want to show some of the jewelry that the Maasai ladies made. Now, this has my name on it, but they can't read, so it's backwards. I can see on the screen, you can read it Naomi, but in actuality, it's backwards. And this is very precious to me. I was asked to carve a piece of tanzanite for an international competition. And it turned out that there wasn't anything available in New York at that time. So I was asked, would I go to Tanzania to the mines? And I said, me, go to the mines? How wonderful, immediately. And while
Get out of my way.
Would I do some humanitarian work? And I said, of course. So what occurred is I got to Tanzania and started working with about a dozen wonderful Maasai women, teaching them how to wire wrap tanzanite that they were allowed to pick up because tanzanite is found only on their ancestral lands. Mm-hmm. And this occurred because Haley Henning and Tanzanite won, and at that time, Tanzanite one was producing a lot of material, but lo and behold, they didn't have anything that was quite right at that moment. And I started to carve a piece that was a sceptered Tanzanite. I said, please don't make me carve this. This is a sin. And they said, this is all that we have. There was a time element here, and I started to carve it. It was a nightmare. But then a couple days later, this wonderful crystal that you can see, I'm wearing one of my Maasai necklaces there, this wonderful crystal showed up, and I began to carve that. Now I'm carving it in a room that is full of concrete rubble, using a flashlight, and hoping that all would be well. Eventually, that crystal partially carved, because it had to be exported as an art object, not as a specimen. So it eventually came to New York, and this is what occurred. Now, this is not this was a very difficult piece to carve because there are cells in it that have liquid. And the liquid is a type of sulfuric acid. It smelled awful. It peeled my hands. It was not easy to carve. And there are calcite inclusions in it. So we have different hardnesses and softnesses in the material. And tanzanite also is delicate. You don't want to heat it. It says, ouch, and then it makes a rainbow fracture. So carving it was very interesting. I ended up using a lot of Cratex wheels to carve it and eventually to polish it very, very carefully. This won a first place at the AGTA Spectrum Awards. And the base is a part of what I felt when I was over there as the wind came down the mountains. It just felt to me that this was the right base. This is maybe the second or third base that I've made for this piece, because these pieces need to have the right setting.
Exactly. So, no, it's a very dynamic base. It shows almost a vortex-like design. True. So when you're describing it as the wind coming down off the mountain, visually, it makes perfect sense.
Now, one thing that's very important about this is that I have dedicated the profits from the sale of this piece to the Maasai for eye care, because one of the things that I noticed when I got to Tanzania is that none of the Maasai were wearing eyeglasses. And it was obvious that they had a great deal of eye disease, cataracts, and all sorts of things. Now, where would you be if you couldn't see? I don't know if you wear glasses or contacts or, well, yeah, I mean, that would be the end of our lives, basically. Yeah. So I have this priced for $500,000. I'm making the pitch now, and the profits from the sale of this piece will go for eye care for the Maasai. And I want to thank B.J. Hackman, who has been very helpful in setting up the initial part of creating a foundation in Arusha so that as soon as the piece is sold, we will be able to get going. I want to point out one other thing. In respect to the crystal itself, the base of the carving really is uncarved. So you can see the natural crystal faces here as it goes into the setting.
I love it. I didn't notice that about it when I
thought that maybe you can see as I'm moving it. Can you see the light?
Yeah, I can see it in the video now. Yeah. I mean, and I try to be very respectful. I didn't want to carve all of the inclusions out. This is the piece that comes from the earth. Here it is. It's got the various colors in green and occasionally a little magenta and the beautiful purple and blue. It's a really magnificent piece that I hope goes to a new home soon. I hope so too, just for the fact that you're helping the Maasai. And here's a wonderful picture of you in traditional Maasai, I guess, neck gear. I'm not sure what they would call it exactly, but you can see that piece hanging down in the front with your name on it that you had held up earlier in the show. Right. Yeah, that you're holding up right now. Right. So, Naomi, there are so many other pieces that we could go into because you have such a fantastic collection. But we're running out of time, and I know that you have a demonstration that you want to show us. So I'm going to invite you to give your website URL to everybody right now so that they can check it out on their own time. In the meantime, I'm going to ask, the poll is up, the 5 questions. So go ahead, give your website URL, and then let's go ahead and watch your demonstration.
It's naomisarna.com or naomisarnadesigns.com.
Fantastic. Okay, show us what you're going to do right there in the studio now.
Okay, this is.
I'm going to just change the camera.
This is purely
Okay,
experimental. We know.
Troy is moving the camera. Now, we had a little excitement here today. For reasons that defy my understanding, my machine is a little out of whack. And you've never heard of a machine being in whack, but this is a machine that's out of whack. However, it's still going to work well enough. I have a motor, the bearings here, the shaft, and a chuck, into which I have put a diamond-plated drill bit, happens to be half round here. And the speed of water, if you're going to be doing anything with diamond-plated drill bits, you have to have water. And how fast should the water flow? Not slow, not fast. I call this a nervous speed. And
that's a New York term, though.
and this is the nervous speed. So I have here different pieces of material, and they all feel different when you carve them. My favorite pieces to carve are topaz and aquamarine. They feel very crisp to me. Quartz feels a little sticky, and amber, forget about it. But Troy is going to sit here and show you for a moment what carving is like, and he's going to comment how each type of material feels different.
Okay. Troy, because of the sound that it might generate, when you speak, just make sure that the material is not touching the grinding wheel.
Makes sense.
Why don't you pick up a piece of amber?
Okay. Full disclosure, I've never done this before. And so I'm just gonna, which side am I pushing?
Anywhere. None of these pieces are you can't do anything. Now that's okay, anything.
Oh, it's not that loud, so that's actually working out well.
Okay, yeah, I have a thing going kind of slowly. This is, it has, if he would continue to carve this, he would notice that it has a lovely kind of honey smell to it. Okay, now go on to.
That felt very soft and kind of easy to do.
Okay, why don't you then go to this piece of Kunlun, China, Kunlun Mountains jade, which I got when I went to China. I was participating in. Go put it to the flat, not the edge. Yeah, it'll be easier. You can hear already that
already there's a lot more sound in that one.
Yeah, this feels a lot stronger of a material here.
Okay, so China has pretty well used up its Kunlun Mountain jade resources. I was lucky to get some pieces, and I was also very fortunate to win a couple of awards there, which were, certainly highlights of my life. Now, here is, what is this? This is like a holly blue chalcedony, and that's going to give you another sound and another feel. So go into one of the grooves. Like
whoa!
Now, see, it feels different.
It does. It feels very different.
So every material has its own feel, its own sound. And I want to mention at this point, see, something happened.
Yeah, it's different now.
It's exciting, isn't it? It's exciting, isn't it?
Oh, yes, I know. I'm fascinated by what happened, actually. It is exciting. You can actually, it's changing the shape.
Yes.
And for all the women who are making comments that they want Troy to remove that shield, please stop. The wet T-shirt contest is it's the midnight Mineral
That's
Talks live
exactly-
show.
That's tomorrow night.
Okay, I want to mention something about people starting carving. This is obviously a very easy thing to do, but you want to have proper equipment, and that includes ear protection, because this can get very loud when it's running fast. Now, we're going to do this for 1 moment only. Okay, now just put anything up.
Grab something new?
Yeah. And put it, now you're going to have to hold it firmly with both hands. Okay, we can stop now. The reason that I wanted to do that was to show this is serious work and it can hurt your ears. So you want to be careful to have ear protection. That's very inexpensive. I think these cost me $15, and they're earmuffs, and they will protect your ears. You also want to wear a mask, because even though the water, pardon me for reaching in front of you, will contain a lot of the dust, still it's a dusty thing. You want to protect your lungs. I use the KN95 mask. So when COVID came around, I was pretty well equipped.
Prepared.
These are a variety of different bits. They come in all different sizes and shapes.
Now, Naomi, I want to make one comment on the audio section of that. When Naomi turned up the speed of the drill, it didn't sound like it was getting louder, but what was going on was Naomi's iPhone was registering that as background noise and doing a noise cancellation. And so you didn't hear the sound go up, but when she started talking, her talking was a lot more muffled. And so it was basically the iPhone bringing the sound level down, treating everything as background noise. So although it didn't make an impact to those of you watching, it was actually, in fact, much louder than when it was at a lower speed.
Well, take my word for it. This is dangerous, and you can develop all sorts of hearing problems if you don't take good care of your ears.
Absolutely. Safety first.
Please. Now, shall we look at a few more pieces that have stories?
Yeah, I think we have time. We're kind of getting close to the hour mark, so maybe we have time for 1 or 2 more pieces, and then we're going to go into some Q&As. Oh, this is a fabulous piece I know you're going to show here.
Thank you, guys.
Because this was one that I had shown earlier, and we had a very, very happy Raquel wearing that. And if I may jump into a closer photo, you call that the New York skyline or something like that?
New York City skyline.
There you go.
At the end of the show, several years ago, a dealer ran up to me and said, "Buy this." And I trust this dealer a lot, and I bought it. And I looked at it and I thought, this is not something I can carve. It would have been a sin to carve this piece. So I kept it around for a few years and maybe offered it to sell it to someone that I thought would be able to incorporate it as is in their work. And then one day I looked at this thing and I thought, this is what I'm going to do. And I put it in a platinum and diamond setting. It has not been carved. It's a pristine crystal, and it immediately became the New York City skyline. So I'm in the process of setting several other mineral specimens. I have a beautiful Brazilian etched almandine garnet that, you know how it has those terraces. I love this stuff. These are works of art from the earth, and all they require is for me to make a setting for them so someone else can enjoy them. This got a lot of attention at the show.
That's a fantastic piece. Naomi, I'm going to jump to ask you, go ahead and talk about that one that you're just holding up.
Okay, the reason I'm holding this up is because it shows, I don't know if, let me see if I can turn this so we get a little Now, this is not pop art, but if you are able, you may be able to see how the lines wiggle. They are interacting. Can you see that? Let me try one more. Okay, this is a piece that had a fracture in it, and I carved it to emphasize the fracture. This is on my website or YouTube. Now you can see right there is the rainbow. But whatever you see, this looks like a lava lamp as it turns, because the front and the back are interacting with each other. Can you see that? It is on my website.
It's on your website. What do you call that piece, Naomi?
This is called Rainbow Morganite.
Rainbow Morganite.
Yeah, because most people would carve or cut the rainbow away. Oh, that's fractured. It's no good. I looked at it and I saw a thing of beauty here, and tried, as I have tried with everything, to create a line of beauty and something that would be really kind of special.
You find the imperfections and make it perfection.
Yes. Well, rutilated quartz. Somebody once said that.
Oh, I know, one of your favorites.
My big topaz, they saw this as full of inclusions that were undesirable. But guess what? This is a rutilated topaz. It's a very rare stone. And the rutile in it, to me, is very exciting. So I carve quite a bit of rutilated quartz, and sometimes things work out well and sometimes they don't. This
in the photo that's on the screen, let's go back to the photo for a second. In the photo that's on the screen, you can see the rutile in the right-hand side there. That's in that little peninsula.
You can see it mostly here, because I made a point of saving it instead of carving it away. It's over there. Here, it's really more like this on your photo. So you can see the beautiful rutile at the tip there.
Absolutely.
But here's a piece that went to Germany for a competition and arrived in 3 pieces. Oof. And because what I believe is that when a piece has a lot of rutile in it in a certain area, it becomes fragile. So it went over there, it arrived in 3 pieces. When it came back, I looked at it and I took the top and recarved it and reset it into this rutilated quartz blossom on a bronze base. We haven't got the video up for this yet because it's pretty brand new. I finished it just before Tucson, and I love the colors that the bronze came up with. I was heating it, and here we go with this beautiful reddish color that just, to me, looks perfect with this lovely rutilated quartz blossom. It's so fantastic. I like inclusions a lot.
You dropped your video. There we go. No, well, that's me. Naomi, I've got one other piece I'd like you to talk about, just because I think this is just a stupendous piece, and I love pearls. So I think we might have lost her.
Yes, she's gone for...
Okay, hopefully she'll tune back in. But this is another piece from Naomi that is, you can see the clasp there, and the clasp is very reminiscent of the clasp that we saw on the opal necklace there. And so it is a common design theme. Those are probably colored sapphires in there, but also just an incredible piece. And here's what the piece looks like on a black background. It looks, I'm guessing maybe that's a Morganite in the center, and matching colored pearls all around. So it looks like Naomi is coming back online right now. Her microphone is turned off, but as soon as we get the microphone back on, maybe she can talk to us a little bit about this piece, tell us what her inspiration was, and confirm what the materials are in that piece. Naomi, can you hear me?
Yeah, can you hear me now?
Yes, I can hear you fine. Tell us a little bit about this piece.
Okay, this is an almost 90 karat GIA certified natural pink topaz, a very rare stone.
Okay.
There was a dealer who came to Tucson from Afghanistan, and I bought a number of pieces from him, and I made a point of being his first customer on the very first day. And he regarded this as a wonderful thing, and I considered this always a blessing because he would pull stuff out of his pocket and hand it to me. And this was the last piece that I purchased from him. It was just a remarkable piece. I mean, where do you see a 90 karat natural pink topaz? So I took it home and I started to carve it. Well, it didn't want to be carved very much.
Mm-hmm.
So I would set it aside, come back to it a few months later. And finally, what I saw originally was a rosebud. But it just didn't go in that direction. And then I went to China and I saw all these beautiful camellias that were blooming when I was there for the Chinese jade carving competition. And I came home and I said, this is going to be my camellia. And I made it, it's set very gently, surrounded by petals. You can see, again, it's 18 karat white gold with multicolored diamonds and sapphires. And it's embraced by these petals. And then I put it on a Chinese, to carry the Chinese theme in my heart out a little further. These are Chinese freshwater pearls, natural color. I had to buy several beads to get them to go in a similar, I wanted a color range, but I wanted the pearls to graduate from maybe 16 millimeter down to about 13 millimeter, where they meet a clasp very similar to the one on, as you can see. And again, picking up the colors on the clasp of the multicolored stones on the petals surrounding this magnificent topaz.
Absolutely.
It's just fabulous. It's one of my favorite pieces.
Naomi, we could go on and on for another hour or two just going in depth on all your pieces. Unfortunately, we don't have that time. It is time for the Quickfire 5 questions. So are you ready for this? You know how this works, right?
It's a good thing I'm sitting down.
Okay, just remember, all of your answers are correct, and we're just going to check how the audience has done. So, question number 1, there are 2 answers, and you got to immediately pick one or the other. Question number 1 for you, Big Sky or Big Apple? Ooh, that was a tough one.
A very tough one. Big Apple.
Big Apple, right on. Okay. Number 2, Wizard of Oz or Alice in Wonderland? I think she fell out of her seat.
This is my original copy of, and the source of a lot of my inspiration. You can see a lot of those lines are the Art Nouveau that influenced me greatly. I have the 16 original Wizard of Oz books.
Naomi, let me ask you a question that's a little bit off. The artist who did that work was John Neal. He was the one who did all the illustrations, not the first book. The first book was done by W.W. Winslow, but he did all the illustrations from book 2 to 13 or 2 to 14. He also he was born in Philadelphia, and he also happened to go to school at the Pennsylvania Academy of Fine Arts. Was that any kind of influence in your life in terms of going there?
I didn't know about that when I started going to the academy because my first sculpture teacher, Evangelos Frudakis, said, go to the academy, and I paid attention to what he said.
Okay.
But they had all sorts of his paintings. The galleries were full of Art Nouveau style. Yeah, it was, and so that was very influential.
So, and if people don't know, it was that Art Nouveau art that really kind of guided Naomi's vision and a view of what she wanted to do with her work.
Yes, so, that's the beautiful
interesting
one.
Side note. Yeah. Okay, for question number 3, I'm going to go back to a visual here, and this explains why I'm asking the question: opal or aquamarine?
These are very hard questions. These are not fair questions.
No, I didn't say it was going to be easy. Jeez.
You sure I have to choose?
Yes, you do. One or two. Opal or aquamarine?
Probably opal.
Opal, all right. Question number 4, design by hand or design by computer?
Oh, there's no question. Hand.
I know.
Trumps it all the time.
And the final question, are you ready for this? Are you seated?
I'm sitting down, I'm holding on tight.
Okay, final question, tango or cha-cha?
I love cha-cha, but tango is my heart.
Tell everybody what you pack in your suitcases every time you travel.
I always travel with my tango shoes, no matter where I go in the world. I love Argentine tango. It's a wonderful art form for me. It's beautiful.
Now, I actually wish that I had that information prior to our conversation yesterday, because I know that I missed out big time on the tango in Tucson. So you're going to have to promise me tango in Tucson 2023.
Well, you better watch out. You know, it's a close embrace, kiddo.
All righty, let's do it. Okay, Eloise, do we have, who's doing the answer today? Is it Eloise or Raquel?
I'm here. I can do it.
Fantastic. Okay, question number 1, Big Sky or Big Apple? After a little bit of consideration, Naomi went with Big Apple. What did our audience say?
Big Sky was most of the answers.
Big
so
Sky.
Wrong.
Well, I mean, it was a struggle for Naomi, so you can't blame them for not getting that correct. Question number 2, Wizard of Oz or Alice in Wonderland? Obviously, Naomi did Wizard of Oz.
Alice in Wonderland, but it was 52 versus 48. So a lot of hesitation here as well.
Pretty close. Okay. Question number 3, opal or aquamarine?
Well, this time the audience didn't hesitate at all and chose opal.
Opal. Well, I think what Naomi is wearing gave that 90% opal. Fantastic.
Interesting.
Question number 4, design by hand or by computer?
Of course, by hand. That was 99%. Who is the person who went by computer? Who is that person? Seriously.
I don't know. I just
Raquel, come on.
And the final question, tango or cha-cha?
And we got it right with tango.
Wow, fantastic. 3 out of 5. I would say our audience knows Naomi pretty well. Raquel, what kind of question and answer questions we have for Naomi right now?
Naomi, we had so many questions, compliments. The chat was always busy. So everyone wanted to know more and learn more about, we learn a lot on how you do it, but congratulations. That's one of the main things from the chat. But in terms of questions, there were a few about what kind of machinery do you use?
The machine that I have was built for me originally by Lou Wackler. But the first machine that I got was a carving arbor from Diamond Pacific. I burned it out very quickly. When I took it to Lou to be repaired, he said he'd never seen a machine that had been beat up so much. So I had to go into a heavier duty machine, which this is. But periodically I have to replace the motor and the bearings. The one thing that is important, not only that you get something that lines up properly and has heavy bearings, is that you have a chuck that is, very precise. And one time I was, when I took this machine to Africa, because I knew they wouldn't have this sort of thing when I went to the mine in Tanzania. And I took my chuck, which is an expensive part of this machine, and I'm carrying it myself because I didn't want to lose it somehow in the flight over. And I'm going through security, and this one woman says to me, "What is this? You can't take this in. This is a weapon." I said, "No, it's a chuck." She didn't know what that was. She calls over a supervisor, and the supervisor, I'm ashamed to say, also a woman, says, "Well, you can't take that in." I said, "Ladies, please call a man over here, and it's a chuck." So some guy comes over and he says to them, "What are you getting wound up for? That's a chuck. Let her go through." So the chuck is a very, very important part of this machinery here. It has to run true. Mm-hmm. And you'll end up spending money on it, but it's worth it.
There was also some questions about the carving tools that you use.
They come in all sorts of shapes, and they're the ones that I use. These, for the most part, I got when I was in China, but there's a company, Lasco or Kingsley in Michigan. They make diamond-plated tools, and occasionally there are Mountain Mist, for example, sells. I just can't think of the name, but it's solid diamonds, and they last much longer. But I do like diamond tools that change shape. So I don't mind going through. They're fairly inexpensive and fairly easy to get.
In terms of the bases, some of your pieces like the Tanzanite and the Morganite, the question was who made the bases and what kind of
I make 100% of the bases. I do 100% of the carving, and my bases may be sterling silver as the Tanzanite is, or they might be bronze, because I'm really very much enjoying right now the way that the bronze colors up, and it's to me it's very, very complimentary. The Morganite is on a silver base, and you didn't see this Rose de France. This Rose de France carving was very difficult to come up with a proper shape, but it fits. It's bronze, and here we go. It's going to sit on a large quartz crystal from the Avant mine.
Nice.
So the bases, the piece can't just sit there. It has to have the proper setting.
Naomi, do you make those bases out of clay or wax and then cast it? What's the process there? Usually
I carve it out of a chunk of wax. And then okay. I might use a wax pen and texture it. And then afterward, I'll go over it with, again, these diamond bits, because they give it a very interesting finish. Now, on the Tanzanite, you can see what I call sort of my crystal finish. It has a sort of sheen to it. Nothing is highly polished. I don't like that look. And I feel it's not right with my pieces. But here you get different light and dark. The way the light works on it is much more interesting, because I went over it with a diamond bit.
Do you have a preference between creating a piece for a stand, or is that based on size compared to making a piece to wear as a jewelry? Yes.
What's the difference of making a piece with a base or a jewelry piece? And I know you do a little bit of both sometimes.
Yeah, sometimes. No, do you have the bracelet on? No,
have it
okay. Troy here has he's wearing a Guatemalan jadeite bangle that I made that he loves. And that has a base that's a huge quartz crystal, again, from the Avant mine. And I thought that was a very interesting way of presenting this particular piece as both an art object and a wearable jewel. I have a peridot that is over there and wrapped up. The peridot fits into a silver base and can be removed in its gold setting to be worn as a pendant. So I like this kind of versatility. The New York City skyline, again, this will come with a base, so it can be an art object. And also, I've got it on back. Yeah, also has the loops so that it can be worn as a pendant. You know, how versatile can these pieces be? That's why, one of the reasons why I make a point of finishing my pieces front and back as much as possible. Now, these pieces, I don't have a base for this. This to me is a meditation piece. You want to hold it a lot. Mm-hmm. And this piece, I'm going to quote Jeffrey Post from the Smithsonian, who said he didn't want to take his hands off of it. Mm-hmm. My pieces are finished so that they feel so good in the hands, whether they're a jewel or an art object.
I love that. It's a very functional art form that you're creating, where it begs to be either worn or it indulges that tactile feel that we all have, where we need to touch something.
That's right. I made these with my hands. I want them to feel good, whether you're wearing them or just holding them in your hands or looking at them.
I have two more questions if we have time. The first one goes back to the garnet raft that you showed at the beginning. Do we know where it comes from?
This garnet actually is in it's in a book about South African gems. This came from South Africa. I want to say Rand. No, it's not. I've forgotten the publishing house, but it's South African gems, and that's where it came from.
Thank you. And then the last question, sorry, I lost my window, is from Vivian Gornitz. As you work on a piece, does your design ideas change as the stone takes shape? Do you modify your carving as the piece evolves?
When I start carving a piece, I know pretty much what I want to do. But there is a certain point, for example, this river wind, which I regard as one of my finest carvings, and the video of this is on my website. It took over my mind. I would go to sleep and dream about it. And when a piece does that, I know that it's a good piece. It becomes, I don't want to say that I am the maker here, but I do feel that I'm kind of a conduit at that point. Something is occurring at a very sub and unconscious level that allows me to do whatever it is. I can tell you that most of the time, I do try to make the piece as tall as the crystal, as wide as the crystal, and as deep as the crystal, that I got originally. So when I finish carving this piece of Rose de France, it's going to be approximately the same dimensions as it is right now, unless a catastrophe occurs like this, and then I have to figure out what am I going to do with this. But for the most part, I respect the crystal, and I bring forth what it suggests that I do.
So for that particular piece, do you know already what you are going to do?
This piece?
Yes.
If you, it's going to end up something, I mean, it's already suggesting right here, go here, carve down here. I know that that's going to be a deep thing, so that we'll end up then with 1, 2, 3, 4 surfaces that will interact as this piece of Rose de France did. This is really quite deep. You can see my whole finger is inside here. And then on the back, there are these deep divots that are about this size, because this was the tool that I used. I don't want to get it up close, it'll scratch it. But this is the size of some of these divots that create optical lenses that then interact with the deep carving here. And you'll see 2 or 3 of my other amethyst carvings I've carved in to get that interaction. And what I say to myself is, do I want to carve deeper? And then it says, yes, carve deeper. And I go deeper. And you'll see in the Shy Girl is a citrine that I carved not long ago, and it goes in quite deep and has a variety of ways of interacting, front, back, inside, outside.
Naomi, I know we are over time, but 2 more questions came in. I think they're very important. All of the questions are important.
I'm so excited.
Okay. Great, thank you. So one is from Sandra. How many years have you been cutting gemstones?
Realistically, for about 12 or 13 years in a serious way. I got my faceting machine about 20 years ago, and did that for a little while and stopped and did a tiny bit of carving, but in a serious way for about 12, 13 years, something like that.
I think that's very encouraging. It means we can do it.
Yes. And let me just say this. This is easy. Troy fiddled with it for a little bit and already was aware that he had made a change on this piece. Anybody can carve. What is important is that you have patience, and the polishing takes forever. Takes much longer than polishing a faceted stone, because when you're carving all of these, this is acreage here. This is not just a flat surface. There are ins and outs and hardnesses and softnesses that occur within the same material. So you have to be very, very, very patient in doing this work.
Right. And last question, I promise. Do you use different cutting fluids on different stones?
Different carving what?
Different fluids or just water?
Oil, different
No,
fluids.
for the most part, I do everything with water at first, but then as I get into the polishing, I might use an oil base with diamond grit. That's pretty much, I use cerium oxide, which I don't love, but there are many, many different polishing compounds, and they come in different bases. Sometimes I'll send them out. Sometimes I feel that I need to have a very thick paste of something, and I'll make it myself. But there's a book by Henry Hunt that can be gotten on Amazon, and he explains a great deal about different shapes, different materials. A lot of people do use a silicon carbide, which I don't particularly like, but is an extremely useful material. So it depends on, what am I working on? Wooden wheels. I use a lot of wooden sticks. I'll go to the, Michael's and pick up birch wooden wheels, that kind of thing, and then shape them on my lathe to whatever shape I would like them to be. You go through a lot of different tools, and I refer to the bits as tools when you're working on different materials.
Thank you so much.
Believe me, my pleasure. This was wonderful. Thank you. And I want to say one quick thing. The three of you brought life into our lives when we were locked up. Every Wednesday, thousands of us got online to see what was going on in the world because we couldn't go see our friends and we couldn't come and go to Tucson and visit. And I want to thank you from the bottom of my heart for all of the goodness and knowledge to learn about Mind Dad. I thought I'd died and gone to heaven. The wonderful things that the three of you did. Thank you so much.
Well,
thank you very much, Naomi. Thank you. I just wanted to let you know that a few people are signing up already for cutting, carving lessons with you, Naomi, and other people are signing up for tomorrow's show with Troy. Plus, there was another question. Have you ever carved trappish emeralds?
I have not carved emeralds. Why have I not carved emeralds? They fall apart and they are super expensive. Now, if somebody would give me a nice emerald that wouldn't fall apart, I would say sure. But to me, doing the opals is already, and the tanzanite, I have several other tanzanite crystals. That's as, tricky as I want to get right now.
Wonderful. Well, Naomi, thank you so much. Thank you for the kind words that you said about what we're doing here at Mineral Talks Live. I haven't been shy about sharing this with people that I've been meeting in person when they've come up to us and talked to us about Mineral Talks Live and have thanked us for doing this program. As much as we've given back to the mineral community, the mineral community, has given to us because it's given us a purpose and it's given us something to do. So as much as all of you are thanking us, we'd like to thank all of you for allowing us to do this show.
Thank you.
Hey, Naomi, I wanted to give you the last word, and I was going to say, can you give advice for people who maybe want to follow in your footsteps? And I know that one of the things that you were urging was patience, but I wonder if there's any other advice that you would give other people, or maybe it's you speaking to young Naomi when you were starting 12 years ago doing this. What would you share?
Keep at it. Don't get discouraged. Work in every material you can put your hands on. Consider any abrasive surface, the sidewalk, an emery file, an electric toothbrush with silicon carbide in it. Be wide-ranging. Don't say no. Say, oh, this is interesting. What more can I do?
Fantastic. Wonderful. And so for all of your viewers out there, if you ever run into Naomi at Tucson or any other show, don't be afraid to go up, talk to her, sit down, buy her lunch. You can see she is incredibly engaging. I've had some wonderful lunches with her this last month when we were in Tucson, and she's an absolute joy to spend time with.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much.
You're very welcome. Thank you for being you. That's going to be our show for today. I invite all of you to tune back in 1 month from today. Actually, I think it's 5 weeks. Our April 6th show is going to be our next Mineral Talks Live. We look forward to seeing you then. Until then, take care, be well. Aloha.
Okay. Thank you.
Brian. Thank you, everybody, for tuning in.
Walensky's.
Absolutely. Thank you, Troy. Thank you, Connor, who has not been on the screen, but I know he's been helping us out technically. And of course, thank you, Stu.